Alrighty. These are going to be our notes for writing linear equations given a point and a slope. Alright, given a point and a slope. So it says to write the equation of the line passing through point x1, y1 with the slope m, you can use the point slope formula. Okay, this is the point slope formula here. Alright, I've put a little arrow under y1, m, and x1 because those are the three things that I plug in, okay? I leave everything else as in. I just plug in those three things there, okay? So it says, write the equation of the line that passes through the given point and has the given slope. Write all final answers in slope-intercept form, okay? So it's actually asking us to go from point slope, okay, which we are learning here, all the way to slope-intercept form, which we'll look at on number 1, okay? So on number 1, I labeled my point x1, y1. Always, always, always get in the habit of labeling your point. Then my slope, which I know is m, is going to be equal to 2. Okay, so I have y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. All right, now I plug in that information that's given to me. So y minus, okay, my y1 was a 1, so I plugged that in, equals my m, which was my slope, is 2 here. All right, then in parentheses, I have x minus x1, which we showed up here was 4. So we've now plugged that in. Now I have point slope form. So if on a test or a quiz it asks you for point slope form, that is all you have to do. You are now done. Okay, that would be point slope form. All right, using this formula right there. But this worksheet is asking us for slope-intercept form. Okay, so we have a little bit more work to do. So to go from point slope form to slope-intercept form, step number 1, we want to distribute the slope into the parentheses. Okay, so if you look, I took this 2 here and I distributed it into the parentheses. Okay, I drew my little multiplication symbol as a reminder that when we distribute, I am multiplying. Okay. So I did 2 times x, which gave me 2x. Then I did 2 times negative 4, which gave me that negative 8 there. Okay? Now let's go and look at step number 2. It says move the number away from y by adding or subtracting on each side. So I have a negative 1 attached, or a minus 1 attached to that y. So in order to get rid of that minus 1, I have to do the opposite, which is to add. So I add 1 on each side. Over here, you can see that those cancel, just leaving me with y there. Okay, I now have y equals. All right, I added that 1. I need to add that 1 to my negative 8, which is how I got negative 7. All right, so my slope-intercept form, okay, I'll go ahead and write that so we have it. So slope-intercept, we know is y equals mx plus b. So I go ahead and compare. I have y equals, which puts me on the right track. I have a slope of 2, which is m. I now have x, and then that tells me my b is negative 7. So I now have it in slope-intercept form, okay, which is why I labeled it right there, okay? I'm not going to go over number 3. It's just an extra example for you, okay? I am going to go ahead and do number 2. Actually, let's go ahead and look. I might change that up. Actually, let's go ahead and do number 4 since it has these negatives here. Let's go and look at those negatives. All right. So number 4, I label my points first. I have x1 and y1. I know this negative 3/4 is going to be my m. All right. So I've got to plug it into my equation. I like to get in the habit of always writing my equation just so I fill in the information and I can directly look at it and compare, okay? So I have y minus my y1, which is a negative 1, equals my m, which we said was negative 3/4. In parentheses, I have x minus x1, which was my negative 8 there. Okay, so if you look, we've now gotten ourselves in kind of a pickle there. I have a negative times a negative, all right? We're going to go back to our triangle that we learned earlier this year. I have positive, negative, negative. Okay. If I'm multiplying, remember this is multiplying or dividing only. Okay. If I'm multiplying or dividing and I have 2 negatives, I cover those up and now I know it's a positive, okay? So I cover those two negatives up, I'm now left with a positive. So this negative negative now changes to a positive, okay? This negative negative changes to a positive, all right? So now, I now have this in point slope form. All right, I now have it in point slope form. But once again, it's asking us for slope intercept form. So I've got to follow my steps over here on the left-hand side. So step number 1, distribute the slope into the parentheses. So I've got to distribute this negative 3/4 into my parentheses here. All right, so I get y plus 1 equals, I have negative 3/4 times x, which is just going to give me negative 3/4 x. Then I have negative 3/4 times, okay, remember this is multiplication, times a positive 8. All right, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys in a calculator just so we remember how to do fractions. So I hit alpha, y equals, enter to get my fraction, okay? I plug in a negative 3/4, so negative 3/4. Okay, I arrow over, I have to do times a positive 8. So times 8. And I end up getting a negative 6. So I write minus 6 there. All right, we can use our calculator to help us out with those fractions. So now, okay, I've now distributed like step 1 said. Step 2, it says move the number away from the y by adding or subtracting on each side. So I have a plus 1 attached to that y. So in order to move that away, I have to do the opposite, which is going to be to subtract 1 on each side. All right, those cancel out. I get y equals, all right, this negative 3/4 x does not change. And then right here, I have a negative 6 minus 1. Okay, if you already owe me $6 and I tell you you owe me 1 more, you now owe me 7, which means you are negative $7. All right, so that's another example when you're given a point and a slope. All right, so we took this from point slope formula all the way to slope intercept here. Okay, so there are multiple steps here. All right. Now let's go ahead and look at our next page, okay? Just so you know, on this page, I would like you to try 2, 5, and 6, all right? Make sure you get those finished up, and you can always check a teacher's journal, all right, to make sure you're getting those correct. All right, now let's go ahead and talk. All right, so on this next page of writing linear equations, this is given 2 points, all right? So if I look at the directions, it says write the equation of the line that passes through the given 2 points. Write all final answers in slope-intercept form. I know that is going to be my y equals mx plus b. All right, so if I look at number 1, I'm given 2 points. I label those x1, y1, x2, y2. I then plug that into my slope formula. Okay, you can see those being plugged in there. All right, I have my y2, my y1, my x2, and my x1. Okay, on bottom here I have a negative and a negative, which then becomes that positive there. All right, so let's go ahead and try that in a calculator. So I do alpha y equals enter because I have a fraction set up. So alpha y equals enter. All right, I have negative 1 minus 7. On bottom, I have 1 minus that, in parentheses, negative 3. All right, so I end up getting my slope of negative 2, which is perfect because that's what we got in our example. All right, so my slope is negative 2. Now I have to look at the information given. All right, I have an x1 and I also have a y1. All right, when I'm doing my point slope formula, I'm changing my y1, my m, and my x1. All right, so I now have all the information I need to plug it into point slope formula. All right, so given 2 points, all right, it says our first step is to solve for the slope, which is what we just talked about. Now it says second step, I have to plug in x1, y1, and the slope into our point slope formula. So I go ahead and look at this. I have y minus my y1, which was 7, equals my m, which we said was negative 2. Then in parentheses, I have x minus my x1, which is negative 3 here. So if I look, I have a negative times a negative. That becomes a positive. All right, that negative times a negative becomes a positive. All right, now I have my point slope form. Okay, You can see there that was just rewritten there so I can distribute, okay? So now on step number 3, in order for me to take these 2 points and get them into slope-intercept form, now I have to distribute the slope into the parentheses. So you can see that distribution happening there with those arrows. I added my little multiplication symbol there because when we distribute, we always multiply. So I leave the beginning as is, y minus 7 equals, I have negative 2 times x, which gives me negative 2x. Then I have negative 2 times a positive 3, which now gives me a negative 6. All right? My last step, step 4 says, move the number away from y by adding or subtracting on each side. So if I look, I have y minus 7. The opposite is going to be a plus 7 there. So I add 7 to each side. When I do that, this left side cancels out, and then I just have to do some simple math there, okay? So on this left-hand side, I get y equals all by itself. That negative 2x doesn't change. And then here I have negative 6 plus 7. So I now have a positive 1. All right, we just need to go ahead and compare, make sure we've done this correctly. So I go ahead and check my formula. I have y equals my m, which was negative 2, then x, and then I now have my y-intercept, which is plus 1. So you can see that that is in slope-intercept form there. All right, now I'm going to go and work through number 3. So number 3, I'm given the point 2, negative 1, so I'll label that x1, y1. Then I'm given the point 4, negative 6, so I label that x2 and y2. All right, now I've got to plug that in to my slope formula all the way up here. So I have y2 minus y1. So m is going to equal my y2, which is negative 6, minus my y1, which is negative 1. All divided by x2, which we see is 4, minus my x1, which is going to be 2 here. Okay. Now I can plug this into a calculator, all right? I see I have a negative times a negative, so I can just go ahead and change that into a positive there. So I come back over to my calculator. In order to set up the fraction, I hit alpha y equals, enter. So now I have that fraction set up. I plug in a negative 6 plus 1, all divided by 4 minus 2. All right, 4 minus 2. I hit enter, and I'm given my slope in simplified form of negative 5 halves. So all right, negative 5 halves there. So that is my m. So now I have my m, I have my x1, and I have my y1. So I can now plug this into point slope formula. All right, so I have y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1. Try to get in the habit of writing the formula so I can always compare it. So I start plugging this in. I have to plug in my y1. So I get y minus y1, which is a negative 1, okay, equals m, which is going to be negative 5 over 2. Then in parentheses, I have x minus my x1, which is 2 here. Okay, I have now finished or almost finished, because I have that negative, negative weird deal. So I change that to a positive. Now I have finished my point slope formula. All right, but this problem isn't asking us for point slope. It's asking us for slope intercept. So I've got to go one more step. All right, or 2 more steps really, step 3 and 4, but one more equation, I guess is what I should say. So step 3, it says to distribute the slope. So I draw my arrows because that's how I distribute. Okay, this y plus 1 doesn't change. Now I have negative 5 over 2 times x, which just gives me negative 5 over 2x. Now I have negative 5 over 2 times negative 2. All right, that's where we can go ahead and use our calculator to help us out. Once again, hit alpha y equals enter in order to get my fraction. I get negative 5 over 2, and I'm going to multiply, so times that negative 2 there. All right, I hit enter, and I'm just left with a positive 5. So I will just write plus 5. All right, now I've finished step 3. I've distributed that slope. Step 4, it says move the number away from y by adding or subtracting on each side. So I have that plus 1 attached to that y. So in order to get rid of that plus 1, I have to subtract 1 on each side. I get these to cancel out. So now I'm just left with y. I get y equals, okay, negative 5 over 2x, because that doesn't change. Then here, I have plus 5 minus 1, which is going to be plus 4. So our final answer is going to be y equals negative 5 halves x plus 4. I'm going to go ahead and check my equation just to be safe. I have y equals my slope, which is negative 5 halves. I have x, and then I have my b, which is going to be plus 4 in this case. All right. So go ahead and work on 2, 4, 5, and 6. And then you also have the next page in your journal of the practice problems. All right. So as writing linear equations, given 2 points and also given a point and a slope. So as both of those different notes there. All right. Both of those different notes. 2 points and from a point and a slope. All right. You got to use the information given to be successful on this. Okay.